everybody.
Hello.
Hello, I've got a friend with me today, not just a friend, but a tour guide, London tour guide, Jess, up-and-coming author, director, producer, maverick. I'm super excited to be doing the tour of the 56 bus route with Jess, because you chose the 56, didn't you?
I did. I chose the 56 for several reasons. I've used it on 3 different parts of my life. I have lived on 3 parts of the route of the 56.
And that's intentional because you love the 56 so
yes,
much.
exactly, yes. I couldn't get away from the 56. I love it so much, absolutely. And I quite like the fact that it starts at St Bart's Hospital and it finishes at Whipps Cross Hospital. And hospitals being very much our heroes at the moment. We are at Smithfield Market.
Smithfield Market, whoever knows that what my favourite bridge is, and is Tower Bridge. And Horace Jones, Sir Horace Jones, was the architect of that, and also the architect of this. And can you see the similarities? There's that kind of Victorian colour and the lovely wrought iron structure that makes this a really fantastic covered market. A famous market for meat.
This market opened in 1868.
And still existing today. So if we look at the entranceways here, this is the entranceways to the meat market. Not very busy at the moment. It'll be most...
So this market tends to be very busy from around about 2 a.m. through to the early morning. So maybe 6, 7.
Have a just look at this beautiful architecture, this wonderful clock here. When it was built, was it designed as a meat market?
It certainly was. There's been a market in this area for over 1,000 years. The meat market has been a solid part of that for the whole time.
So if we look through here, you can see it's very much a functioning market. The market is now closed, and you can see their hours are rather antisocial. 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday to Friday.
So yeah, right down where all the meat counters would be. Go and get your leg of lamb or your head of pig. I don't think they do heads of pigs, maybe not.
Your horse meat.
This
is where a lot of the posh restaurants in London will be sourcing their meat. And early in the morning they'll be picked up from here and taken out to all different places in London. So it's still very much the heart of the meat industry in London, but that's about to change, is it not?
It is. Smithfield Market is going to be moving at some point soon. Sadly, all the major London markets are apparently going to be combined into one huge, gigantic market, which will be easier for distribution.
This is going to be turned into the Museum of London in part, which is a site we're going to see from our bus route today, which is the number 54. We're going to pass Museum of London. Now, there was some interesting things that went on here, weren't there?
Wife selling. It was a bit of a bizarre thing, but it was a common occurrence throughout Western Europe for many centuries. It was most popular in the 1700s. And wife selling happened here at Smithfield Market, and it was seen as a common law divorce. And although it sounds pretty grim to our current tastes, as far as we know, it was mostly, we don't know if it was entirely, but it was largely consensual. And there are many cases that we know of where the wives demanded the wife sale. After the wife sale took place at the market, her ex-husband and her new husband all going to the pub and having a drink to celebrate.
Amazing. The wife sale became popular in early 19th century. Divorce was exceedingly difficult, so men brought their unwanted wives along with them with their normal goods to the meat market to sell them. And we think this might be the origin of the term meat market. Who knows? Look at the light, it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
This is such a lovely passageway. Jess just showed me just before the tour, and I was like, I have been down it, but I haven't been down it for a long time. And just look how picturesque and typically London this is. All the mixing of architecture, the narrow street, wide enough just for a horse and cart, and the pub, the Rising Sun. Now tell us about this beaut of a church.
This beaut of a church. This is the Church of St Bartholomew the Great. Originally dates to 1123. This is one of the oldest working churches in the whole of London. It's quite an exquisite building, and it's one of the most beautiful buildings to actually go and do a tour inside of. And Yeah, lots of movies been made here.
Oh yeah? Which
Yeah,
movies?
so Four Weddings and a Funeral filmed in this church.
Oh wow.
There's the film Suffragettes with Kerry Mulligan.
Oh yeah.
Had a scene in here, and the Muppets filmed here as well.
And there's a wonderful building here that we're going to introduce you to. This is one of the oldest buildings in the city. Did you say it was the oldest?
It's the oldest townhouse.
Oldest
in
townhouse.
the city of London.
Pre-Great Fire, and it's got these lovely jutting out windows, which you may know were designed before the sophisticated sewer system we have now. The reason that those jut out further up as you go further up is so when you throw your chamber pot out of the window, rather than hitting your window or your door or your own building, hits a passerby instead. What a wonderful little quiet place. And we're just going to show you the entrance to the church now. We're just walking through the grounds of it, the garden.
So this church originally was built as part of a monastery and also a hospital, which is still going strong. It's just the Church of St Bartholomew the Great, and St Bart's Hospital will be going past shortly. So this is a gatehouse. So when there was a monastery here, the church originally went up to where this doorway is now, and kind of the doorway through. But that was destroyed when the monastery was destroyed by King Henry VIII, when he demolished the monasteries in the 1530s, splitting with the Catholic Church. And then in 1595, someone built this gatehouse on top.
So tell me a little bit about this.
So this is the memorial to William Wallace, who was hanged, drawn and quartered in this area. Not quite on this spot, we don't know that for sure, but in this area of Smithfield in 1305. Of course, very much a Scottish hero fighting against the English. Quite often we come by here and there are wreaths and flowers laid here. So it's still very much an active shrine, which is rather nice. So those of you who are fans of Sherlock, the TV show, might remember an episode called The Reichenbach Fall. It is from that rooftop just up there that Sherlock Holmes fell, kind of pretended to commit suicide. No, he didn't do that, did he? He fell pretending to die. And then Watson is on his bike behind the building in the middle of the road there. And so he doesn't see that the whole thing was faked. This whole area used to be covered with Sherlock fans' graffiti.
So here's our bus. See, look at this. Efficient London transport system. The 56, two of them there, but this one looks like it's going to turn around and we're about to jump on it. It's run by Stagecoach. This is the starting point, so this is why we got on here, so we can get those coveted top seats. What have we got up here? Should we just have a quick look at the buoy there before our bus comes? Cock Lane. We'll have a little look at Cock Lane because it's quite an interesting part of town. Has anyone seen this before?
So it's known these days as the Golden Boy of Pye Corner, but it has had a name change. It was originally the Fat Boy of Pye Corner. But this is where the Great Fire of London was stopped, basically. It's where it got to, so as far west as it got to. And it started, of course, in Pudding Lane, Pudding and Pye. And so, yeah, so Pye Corner building that used to be here was an old pub called the Fortune of War, and the statue originally was on the side of the pub. And incidentally, the Fortune of War is where the bodies that have been dug up from local graveyards were taken to for the doctors to inspect before the bodies were taken to St Bart's Hospital for medical students to use for medical practice. And yes, indeed, they did take the bodies to the pub, the upper floor, upstairs.
And we've got the bus to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Away from the Smithfield. We're going north on this bus. It goes towards, well, it goes through Angel and then it goes up towards further east. But we're going to get off at Angel. So it's quite a short route because there was so much we wanted to show you while walking in this lovely twilight, bathed in sunlight hour.
Yeah, so you've got the Old Bailey ahead of us here.
What's the Old Bailey?
It's the highest criminal court in the land. It's where the last public hanging took place in 1867, and it's where the last witch trial took place in 1944. Yes, Helen Duncan, Scottish medium, broke an official state secret doing a séance and contacting the soul of a dead sailor. His ship had sank. The government wanted to keep the ship sinking a state secret. They wanted to charge her with being a spy. They didn't have any evidence to charge her with being a spy. So instead, they charged her with a witchcraft law from the 1730s.
Wow, we've got this wonderful bombed-out church here on the left. What's the name of this church?
This is Christchurch Greyfriars.
Christchurch Greyfriars, and rather than, when it was bombed in the Second World War, presumably, it was, rather than restore it, look, they turned it all into a beautiful garden with the same columns and the same layout as it would be if it was a church. The Museum of London here, this was built in the 60s. A lot of this area, very different in architectural style, isn't it, to what we've just seen? Was built after the Second World War, so after lots of bombing. You can see all these kind of concrete, much more modernist structures coming up, and a very good example of that is just to our left. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Barbican. The Barbican was built, well, it started in the 60s, but it wasn't finished in 1982. And it is managed by the City of London and funded by the City of London, but it's the largest performing arts, purpose-built performing arts spaces in Europe, and also a place to live. See these lovely balconies here and these flower boxes. These are residential apartments. Very, very desirable place to live, partly because of its location being central in London.
I mean, it's probably one of the very few brutalist buildings that is a prestige place to live. They're mostly generally knocked down whenever we can.
It's not uncommon for a flat in that building to fetch around the 800,000-900,000 mark for just a simple 2-bedroom flat. Coming into Clerkenwell now, are we?
We are. Yeah, it's one of the bizarre place names in London, and many place names in London, they sound exactly like they are. So there was a well in this area which was visited by Clark. That is genuinely the reason it's called Clerkenwell.
And it's a lovely area of London, now really associated with design and a lot of kind of artistic studios and design, but also some of the legal offices are around here, and also a lot of good pubs. Me and Jess know each other, by the way, because we both used to work on at the big bus company. We're coming up to Angel now. There's a lovely handsome clock coming up on the right. This is sometimes known as the Angel clock or the Islington clock. Very commonplace. These Victorian clocks, now they seem like a real urban oddity. But remember, before people had iPhones and watches and easy ways to tell the time, public time was a very, very important service, particularly around train stations.
Train stations and anywhere industrial, anywhere where business is being done. Anyway, everyone had to be punctual. And there's a story about the very first public clock in London, which was also in a city, at the Church of St Magnus the Martyr. The clock was on the north side of London Bridge, the old London Bridge, and the story goes that the Mayor of London at the time requested the clock be put there because he, as a young apprentice, had been told off for being late for work one day, and he didn't want anyone else to have the same trauma of this happening.
This was having a clock like this would be a good kind of advert. You see there, J.M. Smith, clockmaker, still has its inscription there, and that was restored very recently. To look really nice as a kind of urban oddity in this area. We're going to turn right in a minute down Islington High Street. We're not far from our final stop. We're going to be passing Angel Tube Station on our right, which was named after a pub. There is a pub called the Angel right there, but this isn't the original, as you can probably tell.
Many places in London named after pubs.
Correct, including Elephant and Castle.
Yep, Fitzrovia.
Royal Oak.
Baker's Arms.
And Manor House.
Manor
There's a
House.
tube station named after the pub there too. Look at this, the seats covers before we go down, the classic stagecoach green. I don't think we've seen those on our bus tours before.
Thank you, driver.
Thank you. Thank you, driver.
I mean,
Lovely area actually, Islington. We've got a lovely street down here called Camden Passage, which is full of loads of independent shops, and again it's one of those very narrow, you can't drive a car down there, sort of passages in London with these lovely original 18th century street lamps. Islington's quite a posh area. These properties, for example, you know, they're going to be more than $1 million to buy one of these properties. A very, very kind of prestigious place to live, I guess.
It is.
Our current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, in fact,
Indeed.
has a property
Has a house
around
here.
Let's
So
just
you can.
show you Camden Passage. If you have enjoyed it, do please go to www.buymeacoffee.com/Charley London, where you can buy a top-up for my Oyster card. Me and Jess have been travelling around on this bus trying to get the right content for you, and if you would like to support that research and that service, it is very, very well received. Also, If you want to join the community and you haven't already, we have a Facebook page with 650 members now and hoping to build more, hoping to get it to 1,000. Let's have a look at Camden Passage. So Camden Passage has a load of lovely antique shops. You'll see that they're closed now, but here's a really lovely example. Really beautiful high-end antiques along this lovely row. We have these wonderful iron street lamps that have now, I think, got LED lighting in them. I love these houses. These are beautiful. Love them with the Georgian fan lights in the top there. All the different coloured doors. This is really where I would love to have a little house around here.
So I went on a tour around Clerkenwell just some years ago, and the tour guide was saying that the origin of those decorated fan things at the top of the doors was that each house would have one slightly differently.
Yes.
And so the post person would know which house it was going to by the pattern on the door.
I've heard that too. I think that used to be the case, and it used to be the case if you had a grand house like that with a fan light at the top of your writing paper, the pattern you had at the top of your window would also be repeated. Right. So it was almost like your logo. And yeah, numbering of houses is actually a relatively new thing. So yeah, I've heard the same. Although wouldn't have much luck in this area because apart from this one, it's got a lovely face in a shell, number 27. So you may or may not know that we have quite a well-developed canal system in London. Obviously not really used for transporting goods anymore, but that was their original purpose, to bring goods in and out of London by man-made canals. And we're about to go and see one of them. It's the Regents Canal, and it will be, when we see it, full of canal boats. And really mainly what you see, the purpose of the boats you now see, is for living on, houseboats. It's very expensive to live in London, and one of the ways that you can live in London and maybe live in London debt-free without being very rich is to purchase a canal boat. And I've got several friends that do it. You can buy a canal boat for about £25,000. But one of the catches is you have to have a continuous cruiser licence most of the time. And the continuous cruiser licence means that every 2 weeks you have to move. And you have to cover a certain amount of distance each year. So a mooring in London will cost about the same as London rent. So if you're wanting to do it in kind of a money saving measure, you sort of have to become a bit nomadic along the canals. Also, I just love the canals of London just because you're in central London, but suddenly you're surrounded by still water, which gives the whole atmosphere a really, really peaceful quality. Was this designed, you said Regent's Canal, for the Prince Regent?
Well, named kind of after the Prince Regent, who became King George III, the Fourth even. Yeah, definitely one of the least popular monarchs that we've ever had. Known for his gambling and his gluttony, but we do have lots of things named after him. Regent's Park being another one. He was also very fond of art and brought lots of art to the country, and you'll see that in Buckingham Palace galleries. But yes, there's also a cannon in Horse Guards Parade. Was a poem was written about, and this is a bit weird, but in the early 1800s, the English language kind of was slightly different, and the word bomb, so the word bomb was used to refer to cannons and kind of like mortar. And so there was a poem about this bomb, this cannon, and back in the early 1800s, the word bomb was pronounced similar to the way we pronounce bum. Oh. And there was a poem written about the Prince Regent's bum, and basically kind of talking about this bomb and making fun of how big it was and how it was like the king's very large bum.
Here we have some beautiful houseboats. Look at this one, it's a wide beam, and they'll all have their own number and their own name. You have to have a specific name for your canal boat. You can see, hopefully some of you can see why it's always been a bit of a dream of mine to live on the water, because you're in London with a village community and a bit of peace, but lots of maintenance, which is really what's put me off up till now. But these are classic English canal boats, and the classic ones are very narrow boats, and they are originally used for carrying goods, coal and such into London. They would have been pulled along by a horse on the towpath. So it meant that a horse would be walking along this path where we're walking now, tied to the boat with ropes, and would have been at many times before engines transporting the goods that way. What that meant is when you got into a tunnel, like the one that we're going through under a bridge here, you'd have to get your legs working, lie on the top of the boat just here and put your feet out and kind of walk along the wall to push yourself along.
There's a program somewhere on YouTube or somewhere about people whose job it was to do that, and how it was like one of the worst jobs in history. You just spent your entire life in these tunnels and with bits of soot and things falling in your mouth and falling in your eyes as you use your legs drag a boat along.
So we're coming up to a lock now. These locks are operated with a key. You normally have kind of like a metal key to open these, and they're the way of adjusting the water level. Obviously, London isn't completely flat, meaning that the water level needs to be adjusted. So when you're travelling through, it's very slow work travelling through London by canal. You have to open one of these locks, slowly let the water level come up to reach you, make your merry way on. They take about I'd say about 25-30 minutes to open, and it's quite a spectator sport actually. When you start doing it, you get a lot of people looking at you, a lot of people trying to help. But it's nice. It's, I guess, there's not much in the terms of slow transport anymore.
No, it's true.
And I guess canal boating is one of them.
Yeah.
Some people enjoying the canal side atmosphere. You can see the lock is open on this side. City Road lock, this one. And all this pondweed as well. You've probably seen this where you live, but the fact of the water being still does mean that they have this pondweed problem. It's a bright lime green off of the canal. You can see that there is the closed part of the lock there, and yeah, it's good fun. It's good fun canal boating. We are now going to probably go to a local pub for some fish and chips. So we'll have to say goodbye to you before we do that. I'm so glad to have surprised some of you with a lovely canal. Who knew that this existed right in central London, here in Islington. I hope you've learnt something new. I hope you've had a bit of escapism from your day, from your weekend. Jess, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Any final words?
Final words: yellow and apricots.
Thank you very much, and keep supporting the project. Keep telling your friends. That's it.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.